Ambassador Veltar adjusted his ceremonial robes as he stood before the massive view screen aboard the Terran Defense Command station. Behind the crystalline structure of his exoskeleton, 3 hearts beat in perfect synchronization, a sign of supreme confidence among the Zephyrian Empire. He had negotiated the surrender of 47 star systems in his illustrious career. This would be his 48th. Humans of Terra, Veltar began, his voice carrying through subspace translators to every corner of human space. I speak on behalf of His Imperial Majesty, Sovereign of 1,000 worlds, Master of the void between stars. Your resistance ends today. The human delegation sat motionless around their obsidian conference table. Admiral Sarah Chen, her weathered face betraying no emotion, watched the alien diplomat with the patience of someone who had seen too many battles. General Marcus Rodriguez drummed his fingers silently against the table's surface. Defense Minister, Liu Wei simply stared. Your ships, Veltar continued, number fewer than 10,000. Our fleet encompasses millions. Your colonies span a mere 31 systems. The Empire stretches across 6,000. You have fought valiantly for 3 years, but mathematics is not subject to courage. The holographic display behind Veltar illuminated, showing the current state of the war. Red markers indicated Imperial forces, a crimson tide that had swept across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Blue markers showed human positions, tiny islands of resistance scattered like forgotten coins. The terms are generous, Veltar said, his mandibles clicking in what passed for magnanimity among his species. Immediate cessation of hostilities, unconditional surrender of all military assets, integration into the imperial hierarchy as a protectorate species. Your people will serve in auxiliary roles, nothing more demanding than resource extraction and basic manufacturing. He paused, allowing the translation algorithms to process his words into the crude linguistic systems humans employed. Many species have chosen this path: the Corvan Republics, the Altarian Confederacy, the proud warrior clans of Theta Draconis. All now serve the Empire in peace and prosperity. Your choice is simple: surrender now, or watch your species burn in the fires of continued resistance. Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. And if we refuse, then the Imperial Navy will demonstrate why resistance is futile, Veltar replied, his 3 eyes gleaming. We have learned much about human psychology during our conflict. You are pack hunters who prize individual achievement above collective wisdom. You form emotional attachments to territory and offspring that cloud strategic judgment. You possess a bewildering tendency to pursue hopeless causes. General Rodriguez's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. These traits, Veltar continued, while occasionally useful in subordinate species, make you incapable of recognizing inevitable defeat. Therefore, the Emperor has authorized me to provide additional motivation. The display shifted, showing real-time feeds from human colonies. Our fleets have positioned themselves in orbit around 15 of your core worlds. If you do not surrender within the next standard hour, we will commence orbital bombardment, starting with your agricultural worlds, then your manufacturing centers. Finally, Terra itself. The silence in the chamber grew heavy. Outside the station's transparent aluminum windows, space flickered with the energy signatures of massed fleets. The Imperial Armada stretched beyond the horizon, a constellation of destruction that had crushed the dreams of a dozen spacefaring civilizations. Defense Minister Liu Wei finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You've conquered 47 species. Indeed, Veltar confirmed. Each believed themselves special. Each discovered otherwise. And in all those conquests, Liu Wei continued, in all those surrenders you've negotiated, has any species ever given you a response you didn't expect? Veltar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Organic species are remarkably predictable. Minister, fear, desperation, and self-preservation override all other considerations when faced with extinction. You will surrender, just as the others did. Admiral Chen stood slowly, her hands flat on the table. Around the conference room, the other human leaders rose with her, a gesture of unity that made Veltar's middle eye narrow slightly. Ambassador Veltar, Chen said, her voice carrying across subspace to every human ship, station, and colony. You've told us about mathematics, about your superior numbers, about the inevitability of our defeat. She paused, meeting the alien's gaze directly. But there's something your intelligence reports missed, something your 47 previous surrenders didn't teach you. And what might that be? Veltar asked, though his confident posture had shifted almost imperceptibly. Chen smiled, not the expression of surrender he expected, but something far more dangerous, something that had burned in human eyes when they faced woolly mammoths with sharpened sticks, when they challenged the divine right of kings, when they looked at the impossible and called it Tuesday. Humans don't just have a word for refusing. Impossible odds, Ambassador. We have a philosophy built around it, a cultural identity forged in the fires of hopeless causes, a species-wide pathological inability to quit when anyone sensible would surrender. The silence stretched between them like the void between stars. So here's our response to your generous terms, your overwhelming fleet and your inevitable victory, Chen continued, her voice carrying to every corner of human space. Here's the one word that ends this debate. Veltar leaned forward. 3. Heart suddenly beating out of sync for the first time in his adult life. Admiral Chen's smile widened. No. The word hung in the chamber like a declaration of war against the universe itself. Not the desperate no of cornered prey, but the defiant no of a species that had looked at every impossible challenge in their evolutionary history and decided to take it personally. In the hours that followed, as human fleets threw themselves against imperial formations in battles that should have lasted minutes but somehow stretched into days, as colonial militias armed with mining equipment held off professional armies, as Terra's children proved once again that mathematics had never met anything quite like human stubbornness, Ambassador Veltar began to understand why his intelligence reports had been so woefully incomplete. They had counted human ships, but not human determination. They had measured human weapons, but not human willpower. They had analyzed human tactics, but not human tenacity. And when the impossible happened, when David's sling found its mark once again, Veltar realized he had encountered the one thing the Empire had never faced. A species for whom the word surrender was not a military option, but a fundamental, philosophical impossibility. It was, he reflected in his final moments, a remarkably educational experience.